Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another installment of Transition Talks with Athlete Soul, where we discuss the stories of transition with former elite athletes and what they have learned throughout the process. I'm your host, Steve Davis Jr., former football player, athlete transition coach, and the founder of Strive Higher After Sports. In this episode, I get the pleasure of speaking with Aric Williams, a former University of Cal Berkeley football player and track athlete turned highly seasoned corporate attorney. Now, Aric had a short lived career at UC Berkeley that ended because of injury, but he has transitioned into a powerful lawyer and a serial investor. I'm sure he has a lot of great nuggets to share, so let's jump right into the conversation. All right, all right. Welcome in, Aric. How you doing, my guy?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's a pleasure for having you. Definitely interested to learn a little bit more about you and your journey, as a track and a former football player. But why don't you start off by telling us a little bit more about you and what got you into sports?
I grew up in a big family, and so I had older sisters and brothers to look up to, and that's essentially what kind of got me driving my drive because I saw how successful they were in swimming and track and football, and I said, well, if they can do it, I can do it too, right? And then when we get out there and track, I started track when I was 6, and I enjoyed it. My dad was my coach. My older brothers and sisters were out there running, so it was a family affair, and it was fun to try to beat their records at their age when I came, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and so I've always had a very competitive component to me, aspect that I look at. And actually, funny enough, that's kind of what got me into the law as well. Looking up to my older brothers and sisters and saw what they were doing, and said, well, okay, well, they're going to go that route and try to pursue these different careers, make this kind of money. Let me see if I can do something similar. And so I appreciated that element because I think that that's what drove me to want to be better. And then the other element I think is that when I did start getting out there on the track field and started winning, that was a great feeling too. So I did enjoy the wins, and that kept me going through my career all the way up through college. And even through my career as a lawyer, I take that competitive edge and that desire to win, but I also tailor it down and understand that I'm not a mercenary. I don't take cases that aren't valuable, right? That aren't valid cases. I like to fight good fights and good battles. And when I know it's a good battle, I know it's a good fight, and the client and I are on the same page. I take that and I run with it, and I want to get a good result for my client. Obviously, I want to win, but ultimately, I want to do the right thing. So I think that ultimately has been something that I'm happy to foster, that I fostered as a kid, and that I encourage all kids to do is to compete in athletics, get that edge, get that that bug, right, get that competitive fight in you, because in whatever industry, whatever career you decide to go in, it's going to be competitive, and understanding what it means to deal with your nerves and what it means to have a challenge and overcome that challenge is something that you're going to find in any arena of life. And so I'm very appreciative for that early on lessons that I learned in the academic in the athletic world.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Like you had the environment, it seems like with the family to look up to and strive for, that competitive drive that you have, and we'll touch on the lawyer side, but obviously, from your experience being an athlete and, letting that kind of carry you through, it led you to UC Berkeley. Could you tell us a little bit more about the experience there and maybe like what were some of the highlights that you had from your career?
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to do was compete at the highest level. I had opportunities to go to a couple of different schools that were D1, D2 for athletics. For example, Brown University wanted me to come and run track at the Ivy League school, and hindsight, So I think that it was a good opportunity, but at the time, I didn't want it. I really wanted to be D1, and so that's what attracted me to Berkeley. They were in the Pac-10 at that time. They were D1, and it felt like an opportunity for me to go and really showcase my skills. And it was such a great experience in the sense that not only was I did I have opportunity to compete with what I felt was the best of the best. I also got a chance to rub shoulders with and get to know these other individuals that had come from different backgrounds in the country, right? So I had teammates on football and track team from New York, from Kansas, from Alabama, from Florida, places I've never been to, and people that I've never had a chance to interact with. So for me, it was a way to not only sharpen and hone my athletic desires, but also broaden my horizons. And something that I really value and appreciate now in today's time, given that as a lawyer, I'm dealing with different attorneys from all across the country, and in some circumstances with international backgrounds as well. And it's a skill to be able to communicate with them because not everybody has the same form of communication. And so knowing that you're able to take what they say with a little bit of grain of salt, as well as reading between the lines in some degrees, and know what they're really trying to say. So that's kind of what I felt was a really beneficial element from going to Cal Berkeley. It not only was it a D1 Pac-10 competitive arena, but my teammates were from all around the nation, and then the school itself had students from all around the world. It was the number one public school at the time, probably still top five, and you just had individuals from all across the globe, and I really enjoyed that as well. What a great experience!
Yeah, and that's a really great, reflective perspective on it and being able to appreciate the diversity of people and ideas and cultures and, being able to be in that environment and how it helped prepare you to where you are now. Had you always had that framework? Was that something that you were thinking about as a freshman in college, or just something that you now reflect back on like, dang, okay, this is what I got from this?
Definitely was something that I reflected. At that time, I wasn't thinking about making connections with individuals from across the nation or across the world. It was a happenstance. Just a product of being in that environment.
Hmm.
But definitely, as far as the reflection goes, something that I would appreciate, and I would encourage students, try to go to a place or a university where you can compete, but also broaden your horizons in the terms of interacting with other individuals from around the nation and around the world. It is a priceless experience to understand how they see the world, how they think, what are their pressure points, and ultimately, what their aspirations or goals in life are. Because when you are in a career, you and having to interact with these individuals, um, the goal is to find some cohesion, to find some middle ground, to work together. And if you have a better understanding of what their goals, dreams, and aspirations are, what incentivizes them to do what they're doing, that allows you to better prepare and be in alignment with what they're looking to do so you guys can come together and achieve those goals.
Yeah. You already got some great nuggets that you're sharing, for the future generation to really take in that perspective going into college and being able to appreciate, the wide array of experiences that you can have. Um, but I do know, from your experience as an athlete, being at Cal Berkeley, your trajectory and your career from an athletic standpoint got cut short. Seems like from injury. And at that period of time, tell us a little bit more about like what was going on with you and how are you processing everything at that point?
Well, I think it's important to understand that you at that moment have reached a point in your life that you've been trying to achieve since you were a kid, right? I mean, you've been in sports since you were 5, 6, 7 years old. This is a dream that you've been fighting for, working towards. building up to achieving, and then unfortunately having cut short because of an injury. And it's unfortunate, and it can be very difficult when it comes to mentally accepting that closure, that chapter in your life that's being closed, and having to, move on and progress towards a new chapter. And I think that it for me at that point, I always knew that you can't play sports forever. Everybody knows that, at some point you have to retire. You hope that you can go as long as LeBron James or Kobe goes until they're 40, right? But even then, there's going to be another chapter. So I had that in my mind even before I went into college. And that's kind of where I always had a plan B, right? Plan A is go play football in college and then eventually go to pro. But if that doesn't happen, what will you do then? And I think it's important for the younger generation to always have that in the back of your mind, because that day will come, and when it does come, you do need to have an answer. And if you're searching for an answer after the fact, you're already behind the eight ball, so to speak, because time moves so fast. And at that point, when I went through the injury, I had already had a plan B. And that was one of the reasons why I also landed on Berkeley, was because it was academically very prominent. That was another reason why I chose the career that I went down, the degrees that I chose, because I knew that it was going to be a step towards either becoming an attorney or a doctor or some form of professional individual. And so for me, it wasn't that difficult of a transition, because I already had a plan B that I had been, bouncing around in my head since I was in high school. And it was one of those situations where it was like, all right, well, let's just see how far plan A goes, see how far I can make it in the sports world. But when that comes to a head, let us, have some options, right? Because I'm not too certain on exactly what I want to do career wise, but let me have at least some options available to me so that I'm not stuck with doing something that I'm not enjoying. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to go and obtain a law degree, is because it opens a lot of doors. And with the law degree, you can do a lot of different things. So it wasn't like I had an answer or I knew what I wanted to do. It was simply me making a decision that would allow me to have the options, so that when I did know what I wanted to do, I had the ability to do it.
Right.
And so, I think the most difficult part was the mental aspect of accepting that this was a chapter that had closed in my life, a very long, prominent element in my life, a chapter that I had been pursuing since I was 6, 7 years old. And once you kind of go through a little bit of a grieving moment, a grieving period, you get back up on your feet, you shake yourself off, and you keep moving forward. You reapply those same levels of diligence, determination, and dedication that you had towards athletics and towards your new career or whatever path you choose in your life. And I highly encourage individuals to start thinking about that now, because when you go to college, it's so easy to get caught up in sports and practice and friends and just the college experience, that you forget and lose sight of, plan B and what will happen after this chapter is closed. And it is unfortunate, because I have seen friends who I played with who didn't have a plan B, who did get injured, who did have to close that chapter in their life with sports, but unfortunately didn't have a plan B, didn't graduate from college, weren't quite sure what to do with their lives, and ended up, also dealing with the mental grieving of having to close that chapter in their life, and kind of not being able to move on. And it's hard when you are stuck in a rut to kind of pull yourself out of it, especially if you don't have some structure or plan or idea or people around you who can help guide you. I highly recommend, getting mentors now in high school and in college, and having multiple, getting perspectives and advice from individuals who have gone through it, been through it, and then on top of that, I highly recommend that you listen to their advice, right? Take their advice, heed their caution, and hope for the best, but ultimately plan for the worst.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, once again, lots of great nuggets you're sharing that can help a lot of people. And like you mentioned, it's one thing to get the advice, it's the other to apply the advice, right? Um,
Yeah.
and for you, it sounded like you had a thought process of other options that you wanted in your life going into college. It seems like law was some aspect of law was there. Um, where did that come from? Was that like a product of the environment that you were grown and raised in, or did you already like take your head apart of like knowing that going into sports like it's short-lived? Like not a lot of people do that. So I'm curious as to where that perspective came from.
I've always had, I guess I was raised to always think ahead and plan ahead. And so in every component of my life, I'm always planning ahead. In sports, I'm planning ahead. We have this championship track meet. I'm going to make sure that I do these X, amounts of activities to be prepared for them. I know I know that at some point I'm going to want to, I'm going to have to start paying my own bills. And so I'm going to want to get a career that makes sufficient money for the kind of life that I want. I had to think about what kind of life did I want and what was the necessary amount of money that I needed to have. So I knew that I wanted to have a career that was at least a six-figure career. And so that narrows the options down. You have engineers, lawyers, doctors, so to speak. And so that was kind of the direction I wanted to go in, just based off of the kind of lifestyle that I wanted to have. And I settled in on law mainly because of the options, right? I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that if I went into the medical route, it was going to be one of those scenarios where long hours, good pay, but not a very healthy work-life balance, which is something that was important to me. And I think it's important to everybody, whether you recognize it or not. Life is not just about work and it's not just about play. It's a good balance between the two of them. And for some people, it's an 80-20. For others, it's 90-10. For others, it could be 50-50. That's just a personal preference and something that you have to decide on your own. But ultimately, looking ahead is something that, whether it's ingrained in you or not, I highly recommend you do and allow. And what it will do, it will give you some direction, right? You don't have to know the answer, but if you have a compass that's leading you in this direction, then you'll eventually narrow in and hone in on the specific element that you're looking for as you continue down that path. And I knew that the lifestyle I wanted required to have a six-figure career, a six-figure salary career, and so that was what led me down there. And I knew that in order to obtain that, the best chances were to go to college and then ultimately get a higher degree, whether it's a doctorate or a medical degree, etc. So those were aspirations that I had in the back of my mind at an early age, and not everybody has that mindset and thinking, which is why I recommend to get mentors because they will help you see and realize, okay, this could be a potential option for me that is viable. I mean, college is expensive, but one thing that I can say is that when you're in high school, you can do concurrent enrollment and you can take college courses. And so when you graduate as a senior, you can be a junior in college if you start early enough and obtain all 60 credits that you'll need for your general education. And then instead of applying as a freshman to any college, you would apply as a transfer student, which makes you much more competitive and gives you a leg up and advantage to get into those better schools that you're looking to, the Stanfords, the Berkeleys, the whatever may have you. And that will not only will it save you time, it will also save you money and it will help advance you a lot further along. I did that in high school, and that's what helped me get two undergraduate degrees at Berkeley, and ultimately helped me down my career path. So, those are some things that if you are young enough, and if you have the desire and the mindset, you can become very successful in both sports and academics at the same time, as long as you structure it right.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And I think, as you mentioned too, you know, having the resources, the people around you to help give you the exposure. And from you, it sounds like the perspective of experience. which is something that I talk about a lot. You talk about a compass. You have some sense of knowing that guides you in your decisions, but you got to go forward and you will know as you grow, and being able to experience those things. And knowing like what you already had in your mind in high school going into college kind of helps set the pace for like, well, I'm going to at least explore these different things and give yourself an opportunity to get to a point where you can have a successful career, which sounds like you're having right now. You're a very successful lawyer, working in that space. And you also talked about like there's not like this perfect equation of balance, which I agree with wholeheartedly. I feel like everybody has their own perspective of what balance is. And sometimes it's seasons. Like, as you're grinding early, like there is no balance. Like you're trying to climb the ladder. But as you get older and more settled in your role, you can kind of figure out different things. So I'm curious from your standpoint, now that you're a lawyer and have been doing a lot of great cases and working with a lot of people, but just your life in general right now after sports. Like what has been the most rewarding thing for you right now?
The most rewarding, fulfilling thing is helping people. I mean, it's what's kept me in the game as a lawyer. Being a lawyer is not for everyone. What I do is I'm a litigator and I take cases to trial. And so you have lawyers who are individuals who've graduated from law school but haven't passed the bar, so they do not litigate. And then you have attorneys like myself who pass the bar and actually do litigation. And then you have trial attorneys who will take the litigation cases as being worked up and then it will take it to trial. And I take cases from start to finish all the way through trial. And the reason why I do that is because I want to be the one to help you get across the finish line and achieve your goal. And the best person to do that is the person who's situated throughout the entire case because they know all the nuances and details. And that win is not just a personal gratification for me, but the more rewarding element is when I'm able to hand my client a sizable check that helps put them back to where they were before, right? They were injured in a car crash or they were injured from a business deal that had went wrong. And as a result, they needed legal help in order to rectify that. And it can be a year or 2 years of fighting and going after it. So it's such a relief for them. It's such a fulfilling emotion that they have to just know that they've ran that race, that marathon. They have climbed that hill and they have achieved their goal and found justice. And their level of appreciation and thankfulness towards me for basically being their gladiator and stepping into the ring and fighting for them really makes me want to do it again,
Hmm.
right? The average life span of a lawyer in the litigation realm is about 8 years, so to speak, because of the burnout and the stress and the time and whatnot. But I've been doing it for 11 years now, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon for that very reason. The fight is the fight, and no matter what you're doing in your life and in your career, there's always going to be some aggression, some acrimonious, emotions that you're going to have to deal with. But at the end of the rainbow is this pot of gold that I would call fulfillment and just a level of happiness and completion and peace that you're able to give to your clients. And that for me is if I would have known if I would have known that going into it, I would have chose to be a lawyer a lot sooner, right? Before I chose to go down this path, mainly to preserve my options to figure out what it is I want to do. But knowing what I know now, that level of fulfillment and that level of just knowing that I'm changing lives, I'm really making a difference for the better. You can't replace that. It's
Right.
irreplaceable.
Yeah. What you're talking about is that you found your why behind
Yeah,
everything that you're doing, and the why just motivates you to grind past the expectation that it's only going to last 8 years. You're in it 11 years now. Obviously, being able to push through because of the reasoning behind it, so that you can help people and see that being in their corner is like the sports side of you, like being in their corner, helping them run the race, like all
right.
that part is. really fulfilling for you. And then you talked about too, like lifestyle. So I'm curious. I heard this story about you that your lifestyle, you go out to different places around the world and you collect seeds and bring them back to your home and create a garden. Tell us more about that.
I'm a big health guy. It just comes, I think, hand in hand with being an athlete. You're always trying to find ways to help your body optimize its abilities and capitalize on whatever elements around you can in order to give you that edge. And that kind of got me into gardening and growing and cooking. And food is a big element of health. And so for me, I treat my body as a temple. What I put into my body, I want to make sure that it's clean, that it's healthy, that it's gonna bring back some positive results. And that led into this, I guess, passion, so to speak, of growing my own ingredients that I like to cook. And then as I started to learn more about food and the different varieties around the world, I started to realize that the diversity in fruits that come from places like Brazil or Colombia or in places like Asia or Thailand, it just you would have never even heard of or thought of unless you went there and experienced and saw. And for them, it's just like an apple, right, or an orange or a banana. But for us, it's like what it's a foreign, brand new, experience and taste. So I do enjoy that, and so it's like a merger between my passion for health and my passion or my fulfillment, or I find it fun to learn and learn new fruits and try new flavors, and ultimately try to cook with it into some level of cuisine. I'm not the best cook, but I do like to try, and I find that it all starts with the best ingredients, right? It could be a 4 ingredient recipe, but if you have the best 4 ingredients, then that's going to be the most tasty recipe you can find out there. So that's kind of how that emerged, was through athletics, actually, and the desire to be healthy.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Like thinking about like the health of yourself, taking in an other aspect of exploring and bringing that back home to try things. It seems like this theme of you just like let me put myself out there and do it, for
Got
myself
to.
and like what's serving you, which is awesome to hear. And that's a cool story, man. Like, I'm gonna have to come check you out and see what you're making.
Hope
I'm
so.
um so as you thought about this, like, you got many different aspects of yourself now. What would you say is your identity outside of sports?
I think that's a good question, because that's at the root and core of every individual. What drives you, right? What drives you to be an athlete? What drives you to be a lawyer? What drives you to be a good Samaritan? And I think the identity that I want to have for myself is an individual who appreciates the world and the people in the world and what it has to offer, and then takes that and tries to give back to the world, and take what the world's giving you and use it to a degree, or change it and add to it and make it better, and then give it back to the world,
Mm.
right? So, for example, with growing different fruits and vegetables, taking what the world has given you with this beautiful variety of and diversity of fruits and vegetables and flavors, and then giving it back to the world, and letting other individuals taste this food, and broaden their horizons, and help open their eyes and their knowledge to what else is out there in the world, to help them appreciate it and want to protect it, and want to also do better, and kind of like the Boy Scouts, right? Leave it better than what you left than what you found it. I think is probably what I would like to strive to be as my identity, is just ultimately doing good, right? I don't I'm not looking to be great. I'm just looking, if I'm great, great, right? But I think ultimately what I'm looking to do is just have a positive impact in all realms of what I do, in everything that I do, whether it's as a lawyer, as in the community, And farming, as long as I'm doing something positive that is going to be uplifting for the next generation, that's really what I want to do. That's because ultimately that's how I got to be where I am today, right? It took a community. I had a lot of individuals who poured into me, who mentored me, who gave me their life experiences and helped me get to where I am. And I really appreciate that because I can see in reflecting back, I could have made a lot of stupid mistakes. I could have made a lot of dumb moves, but it was because of those individuals who were giving back that helped me get to where I am. And I'm in a really good place in my life. I'm very happy and very fulfilled with my career and with what I'm doing. So, I want everybody to have this feeling. I have friends who are in the legal world or who are outside of the legal world who are unhappy with their career or with their life or with what they're doing. And, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Life is short and it should be fulfilling. It should be rewarding. It should be, enjoyable. And, especially for minorities, I feel that they don't have the amount of guidance and experience that 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 they need. And so I'm happy to be able to be another individual in the community to help provide that level of service that I think we're lacking.
Man, thank you, Eric, for your time today. Great nuggets that you shared, and definitely gonna come check out the food that you're making. I
Oh,
want to
man.
see.
A little bit
Well,
Asian, a little bit Jamaican, a little bit of
yeah,
African,
yeah,
a
everything, huh?
little bit of Indian. We switch it up, man. A little curry, a
There we
little pad
go.
thai. Depends
Okay,
on
okay.
what you're looking for.
Hey, I'm open to exploring.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again. Thank you for all of those that tuned in. Appreciate you checking out this latest edition of Transition Talks. Once again, this is a series to highlight those stories, the transition and the after effects, and really to shed light on these stories and give you some inspiration. So if you have a story that you want to tell, please let Athlete Soul know so we can continue to highlight these great things that are happening. But Aric, once again, appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. You guys take care.
Yeah.